We all have our demons.
Not enough pain.
What's up, everybody? It's Kaelrian, aka Chugmug, aka Saladolin, aka Video Babo XE, aka Video Babo, aka Bobby D. How's it going today? I'm here today to talk about another topic that has become a little bit closer to me over the course of Legion, and that is the concept of PvP gameplay. I'm not a huge PvP player. I've never really been. I did Master Sergeant, I think, at best on the Alliance side on my Priest in Vanilla. Since then, I've PvP'd a little bit every expansion. There's never really been an expansion where I haven't PvP'd, but generally it's not one of the things that I do a whole lot of. When I do it, I generally kind of enjoy it. But I want to take a second to talk about Legion's systems for PvP in general, because I think there are two, in my mind, at least in my opinion, there are two competing statements that I think are actually both true. I think that PvP is probably the most fun it's ever been in Legion, and it's also probably the most weirdly broken it's ever been. There's a few reasons for that. I think we need to start with the obvious elephant in the room, which is stat templates. They're one of those things that I think are really cool in theory, and maybe even a little bit in execution. I've always had the problem with PvP that getting into it is like this really obtuse and difficult process where you have to go through this separate gear grind. And in the past, it was usually the case that if you didn't have any PvP gear, the first bits of PvP content you would do for a given expansion or level cap would be fucking rough until you got that stuff all taken care of. Once you had even basic PvP gear, even at much lower item level, you were still way more survivable and capable of doing damage or withstanding assaults in PvP. So I think that stat templates do help to fix that, because with both stat templates and fixed levels of stats per player, you have this cool sort of dynamic where you can get into PvP and just start. If you've hit level cap and you have even semi-passable gear, just log in. You can play. You may not be super great, but the playing field is way more level than it's been in the past. You have way more ability to respond at low gear levels, and what it also serves to do is that players with more gear generally don't outperform on a massive scale. They will do a little bit better, but as an example right now, I'm at 930 item level. I get 13% more stats on my template. Someone at 810, gets 1% on their template. We both have an improvement. I get a pretty big improvement, but in terms of the way that the gearing works within World of Warcraft, the improvement that I get isn't actually as severe as it would have been if I just had actual 930 gear on and he had actual 810 gear on. There is a difference. It's a pretty big difference, but it's not as big of a difference. So the delta in terms of raw power is definitely changed. This has helped PvP in one really big way, I think, which is that PvP is actually way more accessible to new or inexperienced players than it ever has been. I'm not a particularly strong PvPer. I'm not super great at it. I tend to enjoy it when I really focus on it and try to do it, but it's not my big favorite activity in the game. I am just okay at it. With Legion, I've done at least a little bit of it every patch. I've done at least a little bit of Battlegrounds. I've done some arena skirmishes, some duels, various things like that. And it's been a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed what I've done with PvP. But, of course, it's not still my actual main gameplay mode. I still primarily play PvE and enjoy it. Have a hell of a fight here. But, yeah, so I like the changes. PvP is definitely way more accessible than it's ever been before, and I think that's an important thing to recognize that Blizzard absolutely did accomplish. The changes in Legion were certainly designed to make it so that more people would want to PvP and be capable of PvPing, and they've pulled it off. You can argue how effectively they pulled it off, or if pulling it off was actually even a good intention to begin with, but I think overall, this was a noble idea. The problem that I have with PvP stat templates, however, is that there's not really any customizability, and the way the PvP templates are sometimes set up make your class play really, really different. I don't even know if that's a caster. I don't know where I'm dead. Alright. So anyways, yeah, stat templates are pretty interesting in that they give you a better playing field, a more level playing field, but the side effect of that is that you have no real control over your character. If I gear up and I try to prioritize a stat in PvE, I can trust that that stat's going to pay off. If I want more haste, I can get more haste, I can invest in that, and it's going to give me the proportional increase in haste that I've been looking for. Now, having said that, the problem in PvP is that that doesn't work. I get a increase in stats, and it's a pretty decent increase, but it's proportional to the overall stat template I have and has nothing to do with what stats I would actually value. It's just a flat increase of whatever percentage I get of those stats or would have already had. So it can be helpful, but it's often not going to give me the gameplay I really actually want. It's just going to give me, you know, some base level improvement to my stats, to all of my stats. If I gear up 10 item levels and I focus solely on haste in PvE, that matters. In PvP, it doesn't, and that kind of sucks. Particularly because what it means is that you have sometimes jarring shifts in the way your character plays in world content, and then when you zone into a PvP instance, a battleground or something, suddenly it's very, very different. Now, if that's all you play, that probably doesn't matter that much. You might not be that bothered by the idea, but if you play a mix of both, if you're like one of those that really like tries to dive into everything that the game has to offer, you're going to feel pretty shitty about how your character plays, because it's just wildly different. In both modes, it's going to change. And that's the problem that I have with that. The other problem really is that while gearing for a PvP DPS class doesn't necessarily change a whole lot, for tanks and others, it can actually change pretty wildly. For me as a Vengeance Demon Hunter, if I PvP'd as Vengeance, that is, because I normally don't, as you can see here. If I wanted to take a survivability build or a DPS build with like crit and mastery, I don't really get that choice. In PvP, I'm stuck with whatever the template tells me I get. Maybe it fits, maybe it's close enough, maybe it's not. And that's really a problem, because it means that you're stuck with this sort of engineered system that gives you just exactly what the game thinks you need, whether or not you actually want or need that. And it means that it takes all player agency out of that decision. So that can be a big problem. It's something that, you know, a lot of people struggle with quite a bit. Honor, though, has had some improvements. I really like Honor as an experience mechanic. I feel like that's the right fit for it. Especially with the prestige system, it makes it very sort of evergreen. It means that it's very valuable, and it's constantly valuable. Honor in past expansions has tended to be sort of this thing that you get once, and you buy your gear, and you don't need it until the next season. Whenever that season may be. Oh, shit. I'm gonna die here. Anyways, yeah, so, like, Honor in the past as a currency was okay, but it wasn't great. You grounded out at the start of a season, and then you moved on. Similarly, if you were doing arena or actual rated content, you would grind out arenas for conquest. and raided battlegrounds for conquest, and then you would get your gear and you would move on. So it was okay, but the system didn't really... Oh, I need to save this person. So yeah, I mean, it was a big challenge for a lot of people to have a desire to actually log in for Honor after a certain point if you're a casual PvPer. If you're a hardcore PvPer, there's something there for you all the time because you're constantly trying to keep your MMR high, you're constantly trying to keep your rating high, you want your ranking to be at max. I walked right into that stun. So the new honor system, I actually really like it. Like, I like the way it works. I like the prestige mechanic. I like the rewards tied to it. I particularly like it post adjustments where they've added the ability for you to gain, basically gain ranks in perpetuity while keeping your honor talents. It gives you a good base setup that you can play from, and the improvement to that then is that your levels as you prestige higher and higher are more about actual rewards. So as you gain more levels, you get gold, you get artifact power, you have this additional player power coming in that really, really benefits you. And that's a good thing. Like, that gives you a reason to constantly play. It gives you a reason to constantly log on and engage with the game. And that's a good thing. Like, PvP has always kind of needed a sort of sticky retention mechanism that gives players who play it more casually the reason that they have to log in and to continue playing. So it's really good to have that option, and I really definitely appreciate it. It also makes PvP farming more worthwhile for a player who does both. I actually gained some gold from PvPing. I gained some decent amounts of artifact power from PvPing. That is not a caster. I always assume blood elves are casters, you know that? That's a weird thing that I don't really want to talk about here too much, but yeah. So yeah, back to what I was saying. Anyways, Prestige has worked really great. I also think that Honor Talents do help a little bit in terms of feeling like you have an option to customize a little bit more. So where you don't get stat customization, you do at least get some sort of customization through Honor Talents, which gives you the ability to really actively control how your character plays and feels and how all of that works. And that's a good thing. I feel like that's definitely a positive, and that can go a long way towards helping you want to keep playing PvP and giving you at least a little bit of the customization that you lost from not being able to customize stats. Gear grinding, however, if you're a sole PvP player, I think one of the biggest things that is a problem is that PvP gear acquisition is fucking painful. There's no real other way around it. It sucks. It's this weird system of grinding out mechanics so that you can get some small measure of player power. You have to hope that a strong box is going to give you the right stuff at the right time, and that you're going to generally benefit from whatever it might be. So if a strong box gives you something you don't want, then you're just kind of, I don't want to say screwed, but you definitely are in sort of a worse situation. Oh, I already have that item. Now, the addition of the obliterate mechanics that allow you to obliterate PvP gear to receive currency to purchase different PvP gear, I think that's a good thing. I think that gets us closer to a better, more equitable PvP gearing system, but I still feel like it's not quite what it needs to be. It is, like many things in Legion, it's forever tarnished by the term RNG. It's tied to a mechanic that is excessively based on gating through nothing more than randomness. So it works out great if you get lucky and you have the right drops and everything works out for you, but maybe it doesn't work out very well. Maybe you get, bracers 5 times in a row. You can obliterate them, so great. You have some mechanism by which you can recover the time investment, but it still kind of sucks. I don't know how they would fix that either. Like, the more I think about it, the more that's a weird problem. Like, without just going back to a flat currency, it's kind of hard to say what they would do. Now, I could see them doing a flat currency again. They already have Marks of Honor in the game, and if you made Marks of Honor account-bound, or not account-bound, rather, but player-bound, or you used some sort of additional currency system, and maybe Marks of Honor can supplement those by allowing you to cash them in for a certain amount of, Echoes of Battle, or whatever you might call it. You could maybe purchase some PvP gear. I don't know what the best solution is because I'm not a main PvP player, but I think the gear problem manifests pretty heavily when you look at PvP, because PvP players' item levels, like when they just casually play, won't get as high as somebody who does PvE stuff. I think Blizzard maybe almost intends that. I would hope they kind of don't, but it seems like that might be a thing that they like. Just this idea that when gear doesn't matter as much and the inflational value of 20 item levels isn't that high, it's probably okay that PvP players like cap out around 9-10 without doing really hardcore arena or rated battlegrounds. But as a casual PvE player, I can be 930 and I can go into PvP, and yes, sure, it gives me a 2% advantage on my stat template, big fucking whoop. But that's an improvement that I have that a casual PvP player probably won't have access to. And that kind of sucks for them. And is something I think that should be looked at and modified at least a little bit. But I will say, like, to kind of wrap things up, in my opinion, I actually think PvP in Legion's probably the best it's been for me as a casual PvPer. I can dip a toe in whenever I want. It's flexible in terms of requirements for access. I don't have to worry too much about special gear or enchantments. I can just go. And to me, that's really, really cool. But there's things that need to be improved about it, I think, in Battle for Azeroth. Chief among those, I think that Blizzard needs to give serious consideration to the ability to modify stat templates. I think that they need to give better honor talents so that they have more gameplay implication and they feel much more like a really active choice rather than something where, again, there's sort of a mathematical best and worst, which, I mean, will never truly go away because WoW's community just doesn't think like that. But Blizzard can put more effort into making the best and worst choices a little less obvious for situations. And then to the last point I made, I think that there needs to be a big thought into overhauling how PvP players get gear. I like honor levels, I like prestige, I want to see those things stay around, but at the same time, there's got to be a way to figure out gearing for PvP players so they can get a better deal. And then there's sort of a big question mark. I don't know enough about how this could go, or I can't even really speculate on how this is going to go. But I'm really curious about how the Heart of Azeroth is going to play with PvP gear, if it will at all. Will PvP players have access to the Heart of Azeroth perks on their PvP-specific armor? Will they be able to get Azerite through PvP? One of the chief sources of, chief locations of Azerite that we've been told about is the Silithus Battleground that is being brought out in 7.3.5. Will you be able to get Azerite there? Will you be able to get Azerite through any battleground? There's a lot of questions that relate to that system that we just don't know the answers to yet. And until we actually see an alpha or beta, it's really hard to actually take a guess, even like the most remote of guesses, as to how any of that's going to actually tie back together. But with that, I am done with this topic for now. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe if you liked what I just did here. Also, I am streaming 6 nights a week on twitch.tv/KaleRian, so check me out over there. And lastly, if you like my content and like to maybe read it sometime rather than just watch a video, I have a full blog up at kalerian.wordpress.com. Until my next video, take care.
Thank you.